What's up guys, MizzoFrizzo from Pitchfork Academy here, and welcome back for part 5 of my how to create a Steam multiplayer lobby system in Unreal Engine 5 tutorial series. In this part, I'm going to be showing you how to set up a character selection menu. So as you can see here, I've got this variety of characters, and if I click this little icon down here, it brings up my character selection menu. I can select a different character, and you'll be able to see which character I've selected here. And I've got a couple of Steam friends to join me here. This is actually a packaged project that is running on the Steam subsystem. So I've got my Steam friends here. And if these guys select a different character, you can see which character they've selected right here in the lobby. And I'll even be showing you how to set it up so that the player info widget changes the height above the character depending on how tall the character is. So as you can see here, with these characters of various heights, the player info widget appears just over their head, no matter what height the character is. But just before we get started, guys, if you like what we do here at Pitchfork Academy and you'd like to connect with more like-minded people, access to our Discord server, Mizzo's Dizzo, is available for just $1.50 per month via Patreon. The Discord server is becoming a pretty cool place to be. There's heaps of cool, and very funny, and very helpful and smart people, as well as an integrated AI chatbot to help you with your Unreal Engine 5 related questions. Your $1.50 per month goes towards that AI chatbot. It's actually a paid model, so it's very clever indeed, as well as helping to support us in what we do here at Pitchfork Academy. But without further ado, let me show you how to do this. Alrighty guys, let's go ahead and add the ability to switch characters. Now, if I head down to my third person and blueprints folder, you'll see I've got this folder here, character classes, where I have imported these character classes, which are all child blueprints of the BP third person character. And if I open these up, basically what these are just edited many meshes. So I've got this muscle many, and I've also got many, and I've also got many and Quinn. Now I've just basically edited the many mesh in Blender and, you know, slightly changed the materials, created some material instances for each of these characters. But in order to follow along, basically all you need to know is that these are child classes of BP third person character. So if you want to create some character classes that are children of the BP third person character, all you need to do is right click on BP third person character and create child blueprint class. And you might call this one something like BP many. I'm just going to call it character 1. And then to make more child blueprint classes of the BP third person character, you could continue to right click on it and create child blueprint class. Or since this character class right here is a child of BP third person character, what you could do is simply duplicate this one. So if I press Control D and duplicate it, I could call this one character 2, and so on and so forth, character 3, character 4. And then if you wanted to be able to distinguish between these characters and sort of visually see the difference, you could change the skeletal mesh and maybe the materials in this one. So the first one, you know, could just be many. And then the second one, maybe you want to change the skeletal mesh to Quinn and change the animation blueprint to ABP Quinn, and so on and so forth, so that you've got a few different characters, and maybe change the materials on them so they're a slightly different color or something like that. So in order to follow along with this tutorial, you should have 4 character classes that are all children of BP third person character. I'm going to delete these ones. I'm not going to use these ones. I'll use these 4 that I have imported. And the only other thing that you'll need is some images to represent each of your characters. So if I go into this thumbnails folder, what I've done is I've literally just taken some screenshots of my characters in Engine, and then I've taken those screenshots into Canva and I've put them onto, I believe, 256 by 256 canvas, and just created these textures, which are just, just images of each character, which I've then dragged and dropped into the content browser here to import them as textures. With all that being said, guys, let's go ahead and add the ability to switch to these different characters. So this is actually going to be pretty straightforward. I've closed a few of my tabs up here, but I'm going to continue to clean this up. I'm not actually going to need any of these open. Let's go ahead and open all of the blueprints that we're going to need to edit. So if we go into blueprints and lobby, the first one I'll open is our BP PC lobby, our player controller. And I'm also going to open the player slot, and I'll open the game mode. And we're also going to need our lobby UI. And last but not least, we're going to need the parent class of all of our characters, which is the BP third person character. So I'll also open this one up. And we're going to start in BP PC lobby. And what we're going to do in here is we're going to first add a variable, and we'll call it selected character class. And this is going to be a class reference to our third person character. So find third person character, BP third person character, class reference. And basically this means that we can reference this class, third person character, or any child classes of it. So you'll see that in action shortly. But this variable, we will make a rep notify. So select it, and in the details panel, go to replication, change it to rep notify. And as I've explained earlier, with rep notifies, we just need to make sure we set them on the server, and then any changes on the server will be replicated down to all clients. So let's hold Alt and click and drag that variable out to get a set node, and let's right click and create a new custom event, and we'll call this run on server underscore update selected character. Plug in the execution pin and grab this input pin and drag it onto the node to create an input on this custom event. And then don't forget to select this custom event and change the replicates to run on server and reliable. Nice. And now that we've got this rep notify, we've got on rep selected character class. So this is the functionality that executes whenever this variable is changed. And all we need to do in here is grab these nodes here, our cast to lobby game mode, and the execute update player info in the game mode, because this is the function that we're going to modify that will basically change our character. So we can control C these nodes here, head into on rep selected character class and paste these in here, plug them in. And that is all we need to do in the player controller. We can compile and save that, and then we're going to head to the player slot. And what we'll do in here is we'll first create a variable, and we'll call this one character to spawn. And this, once again, will be a class reference to our third person character, BP third person character class reference. And I'm going to grab the add player custom event here and this set PC and drag them out a little bit, and I'll alt click and drag characters to spawn out, and we'll set it here. And basically what this is going to do is grab that character to spawn variable, the selected character class variable from our player controller when a player joins, and it will spawn whatever character they have selected. So later on, we might go on to add the functionality that will save your selected character and loadout. And then each time you join a lobby or start the game up, you'll have that character and loadout already selected. So what we can do is just drag off of the PC variable right here and do a cast to our BP PC lobby. You can right click on this, convert it to pure cast, and we will get that selected character class variable that we just created and use that to set this character to spawn. And then instead of just spawning BP third person character here, we can plug in our character to spawn variable. and that will be the character that we spawn, whatever is selected in our player controller. But if we want to switch characters, what we'll need to do is right click up here, create a new custom event, and we'll call it switch character. And we'll alt and click and drag out our character to spawn here. And once again, grab the input pin and drag it on so create an input for this function. And then this can plug just straight into this get, this validated get for the selected character right here. So when we call this and we want to switch the character, we set this variable and then we just execute the rest of this code as per usual. We'll check if there is a selected character. If there is, we'll destroy it and then spawn. And if there isn't, then we'll just spawn the new character and then set their transform here. Nice. That's all we need to do in the player slot. We can compile and save that and then head to the game mode. And like I said, we are going to alter this update player info function and build on this to also change our character. But just before we do that, guys, I have noticed that this for each loop with break, when we execute this break, it's not actually preventing this loop from completing. So this would be firing every 0.1 of a second. And what we can do to fix that is we can just delete these reroute nodes up here and stop executing this break. And instead at the end here, we will just add a return node. Add return node. And this will basically stop this function from going any further. I don't really know why the for each loop with break was not breaking, but it is what it is. So this return node fixes that issue. Alrighty, we do have a bit to add in here and it can get a little messy. So what I'm going to do is select all of this stuff here and move it out quite a bit. I'll grab this selected character node right here, this get, and I'll move it up and add a reroute node and pass this over the top like so. And I'll just give these nodes here a little bit more space. And I'll move this over to the left a little bit and we'll add quite a lot in the middle right here. So basically the first thing we want to do is check if the character class of whatever character is on the player slot is the same as the character we're trying to switch to, because if you've already switched to that character, then there'd be no need to change. So what we can do is drag off of this get selected character node up here and we can get the class, get class, and we'll check if that class is equal to the selected character class in the player controller. So we can do a cast to the PC and make this a pure cast, and then get selected character class and check if this is equal to the class of the already selected character on the player slot. And we can drag off of the equals here and get a branch, plug this in here. And if it is already equal, we can just go ahead and update player info because that's probably what we're trying to do. If we've already got that selected character, we've probably just called this update player info to update the player info. But if it isn't equal, what we want to do is call that switch character function we created in our player slot. So this is a loop of the array of player slots. So we can drag off of this and switch character and plug the false into here and then go on to update player info. And I'll just add some reroute nodes on this one and pass it over the top. And the character to spawn that will pass through on this call to switch character is the selected character class from the PC, like so. Try and keep this as neat and tidy as possible. Nice, and that's it. We can now head to our lobby UI because we are going to add some buttons to switch the character. So I'm going to add these down the bottom left. This is a design thing. You know, you can set this menu up to work and look however you like, but I'm just going to add this down here at the bottom left. So I'll first add a button, and I'll change the anchor to bottom left. And this button I'm going to make just 100 by 100 units. Whoops, that's the position. 100 by 100 units. And I might make the position 60 and minus 160 because it's 100 tall. So that should make it nice and square down at the bottom left here. And I'll just give this button a general normal padding of something like 6 and a pressed padding of 3. Or no, the other way around. Normal padding of 3, pressed padding of 6. And we'll add an image to that button. And let's rename this button button underscore character select. And the image we can call image underscore selected character, and make sure that this image is set to is variable, because we're going to change this image depending on which character you've got selected. And for now, we can set the default of the brush here. So drop the brush down and select an image. And for me, I've got my I underscore Manny, which is kind of my default character. And I'm just going to change the padding on this image to 0 so that it's not squished. So these are square images, and I want equal padding on all sides. So I'll just make the padding 0. And then I'm also going to want a kind of little window that will pop up with buttons to select my various characters. So I am going to use a size box, grab a size box and just drag it out down here. I'll anchor it to the bottom left, and I'm going to make this one 560 by 560. And this is basically just the right size to fit my 4 buttons with equal padding around. So you could follow along with what I do here and then go ahead and change it if you like. But once again, to make this sort of equidistant from the sides of the screens here, I'll make the position 100 and negative 660. And then inside of the size box, I will put a vertical box. And inside of the vertical box, I will put a horizontal box. So I'm basically going to have 2 horizontal boxes inside of a vertical box. And then I'm going to grab this button and the image and just copy those. And inside of the first horizontal box, I'll paste that in. And I'll actually wrap that button. So I'm going to right click that button and wrap it with a size box. And this size box, I'm going to override the width and the height, and I'm going to make it 280 by 280. So this is half of 560. So I will fit 4 of these images in here. Actually, these images are 256. So I might just make this 256 by 256. And then this overall size box here, I'll make it 512. 512 by 512, because I don't really want to stretch those images. And this will become negative 612 to make it nice and square in the corner here. Nice. Because this button is quite a bit larger, I might just select the button and change the normal padding to 6 and the pressed padding to 12. And the images in this character select box do not need to be variables because they're not going to change at runtime. So I'll select that image and uncheck is variable, and I'll just make this one image underscore Manny, and the button I will rename to something like button underscore select Manny. Nice. And now that this sort of first one is set up, what we can do is just select the size box, the button, and the image, and Control C, then select the horizontal box and paste it in. And then we've got a second one, and then we can select the horizontal box all the way down to select everything in both of these buttons, and Control C that. Then select the vertical box and paste another horizontal box with 2 buttons in it in like so. And now we can just change the images and rename all of these buttons. So I'll rename this one to Select Quinn. And I'm not really going to worry about the names of the images because we're not using them as variables anyway. You can keep this organized by renaming the images, but just to make this a bit quicker and easier, I'm not going to bother. I'll just change the image. So I'll find I_Quinn. Where is it? There she is, iQuinn. And this one will be button_select muscle many. And the image will be I_muscle many. And then this one is button_select many. And the image will be I_many. And just before we go on to set up the code for these buttons and select the characters, what I might do is select this size box that has all the character images in here, and I might just rename it to character select or something like that. And I will make this a variable because we're going to hide and show this at runtime. And I will also just scroll down and change the visibility to collapsed, because I'm going to set this up so that when I press this little button down here, it will make the character select pop up. And then when you select a character, it will collapse again, and your little character select button here will show which character you have selected. Alrighty, let's go on over to the graph. And the first thing I'm going to do in here is create a couple of variables. Let's add one variable and call it selected character class. And this will be a class reference to BP third person character, our parent character class reference. And I'm also going to create a map that sort of contains the different thumbnails for each character class. So we can actually duplicate this variable, but it won't let me Control D this for some reason. So if I press Control C and then Control V, it will duplicate that variable, and we'll rename this one to character thumbnails, something like that. And then down here in the details panel, we can click this little drop down and change this to a map. And so if you're not familiar with maps, basically you'll have one variable type, which is the key, and at each key you'll have a value, and the value can be any variable type, which is this second variable type right here. So if we drop this down and we search for texture and make this a texture 2D, it basically means we'll be able to store a list of texture 2Ds that correspond with whatever class you want them to within the BP third person character class. So if we compile this now, we've got the default values down here. We can add one, and we'll add BP many, or whatever your first character class is, as the first one, and then the image will be I_many, so on and so forth for all of your character classes. So I'll just do these in order. Quinn, and then add I_Quinn. Next one will be muscle many, I_muscle many, and mini I_mini. And what we'll do first here in the event graph is on event construct, after we set the visibility of our start button here. Let's set our selected character class variable as whatever we have selected in our player controller. So we can get player controller and do a cast to our PC. Make this a pure cast. And we will get that selected character class from our PC so that we can use it here in the UI. And then we're going to use this class to find the value in our map, to find what image to display on our little character select button. So we'll get our character thumbnails, and we can we'll find the value at this key, which will return a texture, and we'll grab our image selected character and set brush from texture. Set brush from texture. Texture will be the value that we find in this map, like so. Next, let's just make it so that our little character select button makes our character selection size box appear. So we can find our button character select and then add an on clicked event. And when we click that character select button, we want to hide it. So we'll grab our button character select and set visibility. And we'll set visibility to hidden. And then we can duplicate this and we'll replace this with our character select, which is the size box that contains our character selection. And we'll use this to set it to visible. And now the buttons to select each of our characters. So I'll get button select many, add the on clicked event, button select Quinn, add the on clicked event, muscle many on clicked, and many on clicked. And I'm just going to duplicate this get player controller and cast to our BP PC. Duplicate it down here, make this a pure cast, and we are going to call our run on server update selected character that we created earlier. We'll also set our selected character class variable here, and we'll set it as whatever we want this button to spawn. So this one is many. I'll set this as many and plug it in like so. And then I'll grab all of these nodes here and I'll duplicate them for each of our buttons and convert all of these casts to pure. And then plug in the on clicked event and change this to the corresponding character class. BP Quinn. Plug this one in. This one is muscle many. Plug this one in. This is many. And then the next thing we want to happen if we click any of these buttons is to collapse our character select size box. So we can grab this one here, the character select, that sets it to visible. We'll duplicate it down here and we'll change this back to collapsed. And we can plug all of these into here like so. And then we want to set the image of our little character selection button to the character we've selected and then make it visible again. So let's actually go up to the top here and duplicate these nodes right here that set the image of the image selected character. We'll duplicate this down here and plug this in, and this just needs a value, which is our selected character class. And then all we need to do is grab this button character select that we set to hidden and set it back to visible. So when we click these buttons, it's setting this variable to whatever character we want to spawn. And then it's calling that update selected character function that we created in our player controller. And in our player controller, it is setting that variable on the server, which is onRep notify. And then onRep will run, which will call update player info in our game mode. And this will check if we've already got that character selected. And if we haven't, it will call switch character in the player slot, which will store that character that we want to spawn. Check if we already have a character, and if we do, destroy it, and then spawn the new character. And if we don't, go ahead and spawn it. So that is pretty much all set up and working now. I'm going to compile and save all of these blueprints, but there is something else I would like to add just before we test this out. And that is to basically change the height of our player info widget above the character's head, depending on how tall the character is. So if I go to my BP third person character blueprint and head to the viewport and select the player info widget, I just moved this up somewhere above his head. So this is actually 40 units above the top of the capsule here, or thereabouts. Yep, about 40 units above. I think maybe that's a bit too much. I think about 30 units will be good. But basically what I want to do is tie the height of this widget to the size of the capsule component. Because if I open up, for example, my muscle many, which is my largest character, he has an absolutely huge capsule component that is 260 units high. So I don't want the widget to sort of sit in front of his face or anything like that. I want it to spawn above his head. And likewise with Mini, I want the widget to just be above his head. So in my third person character blueprint, I'll head to the construction script and I'll grab my player info widget and I will set the relative location. I can split this struct pin, and basically if we head to the viewport and check the player info widget, the location is 0, 0, and then whatever you set the height to be. So I'm just going to set it to be the half height of the capsule component plus 30 units. So I will get the capsule component, whoops, and I'll get the scaled half height, get scaled half height, and add 30 and plug that into the Z axis like so. And it is as simple as that. No matter what height the character is, the player info widget will appear just above their head. And there's just one last thing we need to do to make sure that our character spawns the first time we load up, and that is to make sure that this selected character class in our PC has a default value. And this is a good test because, you know, basically we're going to change this value later on to whatever we've saved. So let's go to our BP PC lobby and change the default value of the selected character class to, I'm going to make it Muscle Many, and hit compile and save. And we can try this out now. Going to have a number of players as 4, net mode players listen server, and in standalone mode. We'll hit play. And all of our players have joined the lobby with Muscle Many as their selected character. So that default character in the player controller is spawning by default, but what you will notice is that all of the 3 clients over here, although Muscle Many was the default character, the character select image does not reflect the character that they have selected. So we need to make a slight change to the logic in the lobby UI. And what we'll do is, instead of setting brush from texture here when we select the character, we'll delete that, and instead of setting it up here on construct, we will instead bind that texture of that image to whatever is selected in the player controller here. So we'll copy these 3 nodes here and then head to the graph, and we can click on the image selected character, and on the brush we can bind and create binding, and we'll paste in those nodes that we copied. Make sure this is a pure cast, and use this to find in our map the value at that key, and we will make brush from texture. Plug this into the texture, and we may as well bind the height and the width here to the actual height and width of the texture, just to make it foolproof. So we can get the size X and get size Y, plug these in like so, and compile and save, and that should all be working now. And it is. So that character selection image on the button there reflects the selected character by default from the player controller when we load up, and if we change it, it will change in real time. And look at that, we can see in the lobby what each of our teammates has selected for the match. Pretty cool stuff. That's it, guys. If this tutorial has been of any use or value to you whatsoever, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.